Like,
regarding regarding you might be going across some interview rounds, some placement rounds. You might be coming across some profiles on LinkedIn, on different platforms for different roles, for different jobs, right? So any question you have as of now, you can just raise your hand. I'll be happy to unmute you. One question we already got in the chat box regarding recession that I will try to discuss upon, right? Again, that's a very tricky topic, right? We'll try to discuss about that in a very nutshell. So if you guys want to speak up, you guys can raise your hand and ask your question. I can unmute you. I'll be more than happy to unmute you. If not, then you can post your question in the chat box. Right? You can ask your question, and I'll be more than happy to discuss those questions. And it pertains to anything around the world. It can pertain to my investment banking curriculum, my 6-in-1 course. It might pertain to some other guy's curriculum that you might be going through. It might be something on a YouTube video that you might have seen, which might have been shared by me on those groups or by some different persons. Anything on global markets, placements, jobs, interviews. Specifically, we'll be discussing about different profiles and jobs as well, right? In general today, right? But anything you want to ask me, feel free to ask me. Okay, so that is the agenda for today's session. We won't be covering anything new in finance, any new terminology, no discussion on valuation, no discussion on financial modeling, nothing. It's all about telling you in general or discussing in general about the placements, right? And your questions, of course. Give me a second. Give me a second. Yeah, I'm back. So see, if we talk about recession, see the thing is we have been talking about recession for multiple years now. We have been talking about the same terminology after the COVID-19 pandemic, right? Once the COVID-19 pandemic ended around 2021 initially, right? Or the market started to come back, be it the global markets per se, we have also started to talk about recession. And one thing is we talked about recession, especially for the US markets, that the fear of recession was more or less for the US markets. If I talk about the year of 2022, from 2022 onwards, so what basically happened, people started to predict recession in US. The chances of recession were less in India because of multiple reasons: strong economy, good growth, higher GDP, all those government policies and schemes via the budget or by the different ways or methods that come into place. All these things made the Indian markets very positive for the people to invest in. Though we have seen the FIS outflows from 2023 and onwards, but the thing was there was no fear of recession. If we talk about different market models, right, there was always a thing that India might face a recession, and the probability of recession in India was just 5 to 10%. And that was a very less number. It means almost no. The economy was doing really good. And currently also is doing really good, though in the recent quarters we have seen some subdued earnings, right? But ultimately from the next quarter onwards, it is expected the earnings to come back, the EPS to rise back. The stock market has already started to go upwards in the upwards trajectory, right? So that is one thing that is going on. But initially, in that phases of time, US was the only country where people were predicting recession. US will have recession 100%. Then, as months passed, as years passed, right, the probability of recession or the probability by which the recession might occur in US, it came down. It came down from some 80% or to 70% to 60%, 30%, 20%. As the economy started to revive, The GDP numbers became positive. They started to grow. The unemployment came down. Inflation was coming under control. IIP numbers, PMI numbers became stable. There was huge prospects for growth in US. All these things started to stabilize. And as a result, the fear of recession came down. Because when does the fear of recession is there? When the GDP is not growing, where the gross domestic product of a country is not growing. And what is GDP? Is the market value of all the products and services being produced in a domestic economy. अगर GDP बढ़ ही नहीं रही, it means consumption is not growing, investment is not growing, exports are becoming negative, the government expenditure might be nil, right? But later on, the government started to revamp the policies. It came up with more government expenditure in US. The consumption started to rose, right? We also had more investment expenditure that again stimulated the GDP. Though the number 2.1%, 2.5% seems very low, but for a developed economy like US, if it's able to grow by 2.1% to 3% max to max, it's a very good number. We as India should grow by 10-12% because we are emerging economies, right? But US even growing at a 2.1%, 2.5%, or max to max 2.8 to 3%. Again, that's a very good number because it's a developed economy. Their base is very strong. And on a very high base, if 2.1% is growing, again, it will have a kind of a magnifying impact because the delta change on higher base is much more higher as compared to a lower base, right? So all these things tend to come into account. From the previous year onwards, from October 2024, we are seeing the US markets outperforming the Indian markets or outperform the global peers, be it the developed markets or emerging markets, right? US markets giving more than 25-26% return, right? Last year, Indian markets just give you 8% on a Nifty 50 from your January to December, if I talk about, right? Just to keep things in parallels, because in India, the financial year is from April to March. In US, is from Jan to December, right? So just to keep both the things on account for the sake of consistency and similar calculations, if I take the time period from January to December 2024, the US markets gave you approximately 26 to 30% return. Whereas Nifty 50 just give you a higher single digit 8% return. And it's not just about India. The US markets outperformed all other markets. The fear of recession started to come down because of the global markets, especially the US, because the US markets tend to govern the global economy, USD being the reserve currency. And the US markets are doing really good, right? In terms of GDP, in terms of PMI, in terms of unemployment, in terms of inflation, in terms of interest rates, Fed policy, growth, GDP, everything. Then why would be a fear of recession? But from 3 years, from 2021, 22, 23, 24, they have been predicting recession and the odds of recession have come down. But from October onwards to Jan to Feb, again, the market did really well, especially US. But from Feb and onwards, on March initially, the fear of recession again started to come back in US. Now the question is that will the recession really occur or not? Because again, the prediction of the same was made in 2021, in 22, in 23, and early 2024 also. Now same has started to come back in 2025, initially first quarter, last quarter for India, and first quarter for US, right? Because in US we follow January to December, in India we follow April to March, right? As the financial year, correct? What is the reason for that? So basically, we all know that Trump came into account, right? So like Trump became the new president. His second term of presidency started to kick in, right? From September onwards. He took the oath and different kinds of things. And one thing that is threatening everybody, especially Canada, Mexico, China, Vietnam, and somewhere India also, about the tariffs. He wants to impose tariffs, right? On whatever the US is importing from outside. And one thing is, if the US guys or the US consumers or producers are importing something from outside, and the US imposes tariffs as high as 50%, 60%, as he talks about in case of China or Mexico or Canada. So Mexico, Canada, like 25% tariff was imposed. It got imposed. It came back, right? Again, it got imposed. Now from April 2, from next month, right? April 2nd, 2024. Again, those tariffs will be implemented, right? So the thing is, if these tariffs are getting implemented, so whatever the US consumers or buyers or producers are buying from outside countries, are buying from foreign countries, from offshore countries, again, those things will become expensive. The price of those things will rise, right? And once they have to purchase something from outside, because it would be basically for producers, because we as consumers won't be ordering directly from outside, right? It's basically the producers, the manufacturers who tend to order the raw material. It might be steel, like being imported from China. It might be some oil being imported from different countries because oil में क्या हो रहा था, right? Chinese oil or Russian oil. Again, like US won't be taking that oil, right? Because China के साथ उनके tensions हैं, like Russia पे sanctions हैं. It got used to get imported to Mexico, and then from Mexico or Canada, it got imported back to US, right? For multiple grains, from multiple batteries and different things, correct? So basically, US was a manufacturing hub, but not for all the raw materials, not for all the things. Now, the thing is, all those kinds of raw materials were imported from the other countries, be it China, be it India, be it Vietnam, be it Mexico, be it Canada. And again, that was transformed into the final product and the service was delivered. But now, if they will impose tariffs, again, all those buying from the producers will become tough. And because anyways they have to buy, they can't stop buying, correct? Because if they stop buying, right, so what will happen? Then people will start to go like here and there and they will say like US में the good services हैं ही नहीं. And the goods and services for which the US was known for either import it, either export it, or make it by their own. That make America again, as they popularly call it now, there would be a problem in US. US is the largest country. You can't afford to have scarcity of commodities. You can't afford to have scarcity of goods and services, right? So when these things are being imported from outside with higher tariffs, again, those prices will be translated or will be passed on to the final consumer. And we as people like us in US will have to pay a hefty price for the same, a higher price for the same. And that might create a trouble because it will take time for US to develop its own manufacturing capabilities, though it has started to do so. But it will take time. You cannot just stop importing from outside and develop something of your own initially in just a 1 day or a 2 day. You have to outsource, you have to take inputs, you have to take technologies, you have to take raw materials, or at least initial kind of an education or training upon how to run these manufacturing facilities. And that you can only know if you hire the people from abroad, right? So that takes time to build your own manufacturing capabilities. So till the point of time, those inbuilt manufacturing capabilities are not built. So whatever the producers or the business owners are purchasing from outside or importing from outside, the price of this shall be translated or passed on towards the final consumers. And they will bear the brunt of it. They will bear the hefty price, right? And again, that will create inflation also. Now, it might also happen that they might import a lesser quantity of goods because of higher prices. So, for example, if they were importing 100 units of an X commodity, they might import just 50 units or 30 units. Again, when there is a lesser of that particular supply and demand is more, supply come here, goods come here. The commodities are less, but the demand is more. Again, the price of those commodities or specific goods or services will tend to rise in the economy, right? So either of the ways, either they import something from outside in full quantity, 100 or 100 same भी import करते हैं, but the price will be passed on to the final consumer. And even if they don't import the whole quantum or the quantity, again, the supply would be less and the demand would be more, and that would create scarcity. So inflation anyways has to come in US. And as a result, your long-term 10-year yield, it also started to rise initially in October, November to 4.6. The Fed reduced the interest rate by 75 basis points, but the yield on a 10-year fixed income security, T-bond in US, it rose by 1.25%, right? So 0.75% से कम करें, but 10-year yield तो बढ़ गया 1.25 से on account of tariffs. Now it has cooled down to 4.2, 4.3 from that 4.6, 4.75 का number. But all these expectations came into place. Now, we had the recent numbers from US on account of GDP, on account of unemployment PMI. And it came, I guess, like day before yesterday only. Again, all these numbers show really strong, right? But why is the fear of recession coming into place is like one is tariffs. Either the Trump has to negotiate tariffs, the other countries have to negotiate with Trump. If Trump is imposing tariffs and the other countries do not want Trump to impose more tariffs, the other countries have to reduce tariffs. So, for example, India. US imports an average 3 to 4% tariffs on imported goods from India. What do I mean? If US is buying something from India, the business owners in US or the producers in US are importing something from India, they impose an average tariff of 3 to 4%. There might be 7 to 8% also for like some commodities, but average tariff I'm talking about is 3 to 4%. But India imposes 17 to 18%. And that is why Mr. Trump has been insisting Modi ji and different cabinet ministers to reduce the tariff rate, at least closer to 10%, right? Because if Trump will impose tariffs on other countries, they might come up with like some kind of trade war or retaliation of tariffs. So all these things might hamper the growth of US. Goods नहीं आएंगे, महंगाई बढ़ जाएगी. And when the prices of commodities will start rising in US on either of these two scenarios, right, growth will be hampered. They cannot just reduce the interest rates to 0% to stimulate growth like Japan. Japan had a problem of 20 years, 30 years. People weren't buying goods and services. The average age of people in Japan is 60 years, right? They want leisure now. They want to relax. Their maximum spending is towards healthcare, right? So they had to stimulate economy, and as a result, they reduced the interest rate to zero. Up to फिर भी like it's towards a positive trajectory towards like 1%, right? But earlier they were negative. That is, they were giving you money to take loans, right? But in US they cannot do it because the problem is of on one side it is inflation. If they reduce the interest rates at a very steeper margin, at a very steeper quantum, ज़्यादा interest rates reduce कर देंगे, that might stimulate higher consumption, and higher consumption stimulates more imports. Because when the currency weakens, right? Because when the interest rates come down, the currency will also weaken. When the interest rates go up, the currency also strengthens. There is always a positive relationship between currency and interest rates. When the interest rates in an economy are rising, the currency will strengthen. And that is why there were outflows from India also in October, right? Because though agreed, the Fed reduced the interest rates by 75 basis points. But on account of Trump re-election, tariff concerns, inflation expectation, the 10-year bond yield grew by 1.25% to 4.75% approximately, right? So the interest rates rise, the currency also becomes stronger. And that is why many of the FIIs sold off the Indian markets or different emerging markets, shorted those markets and purchased USD. Because USD being the reserve currency, USD is getting strengthened because interest rates are rising. It is not only just governed by the Fed interest rate. कि Fed आएगा, Jerome Powell आएगा, he will say, I've reduced the interest rates by such basis points. What is the final impact upon the yield curve? That makes a difference. Opposite things happened this time. Fed reduced by 75 basis points, but 10-year yield curve rose by 1.25%, right? So on one side, they cannot just drastically reduce the interest rates by 2%, 3%. Correct? Approximately 4% is the current rate there. So 3%, 2% almost zero nahi kar sakte because that will stimulate more demand. There shall be more kind of a liquidity in the economy. People will take more loans. The consumerism will rise. So that is good. But taking more loans is also harmful for the economies. It might increase a further default rate, and again that might create recession. Defaulting on loans, higher consumer rates, weaker currency, higher inflation can also lead to recession because people won't be able to pay back their loans. Free का पैसा market में घूम रहा होगा. There shall be more liquidity in terms of more loans and more free cash flows in the market, and that might create a recession. So fear of inflation is one thing. On the other hand, tariff is also creating that inflation. Okay. And the drastic final outcome can be what? It can be what? High inflation and lower growth, right? When there is high inflation in the economy, tariffs are rising, right? They cannot readily reduce the interest rates closer to zero immediately. So there would be high inflation and low growth. So whenever high inflation is accompanied by low growth, it is called as stagflation. Stagflation. We were talking about this term for India in the previous quarter or the previous to previous quarter when the GDP number came closer to 5% and inflation rose to 5 point something percent, 5.4%, 5.7%. Now the Indian inflation has come down to 3.6% and the GDP number has also risen back to 6.2%. Again, that's really good, right? But initially in the previous two quarters, we talked about the same thing in India. Will the same happen in US? Again, that's a question. एक तो stagflation का risk है on account of higher tariffs, higher inflation and lower growth. And even if they reduce it, it might again create inflation because people will buy more. There might be more money with the people. People might default. So in both the scenarios, they're getting hit, right? So somewhere they have to balance their act of tariffs and the interest rates and of course inflation, right? But Trump is a business owner, right? He might come up with new tariffs. He might take back those tariffs also. But one thing is, all these things of tariffs now, at least I would say max to max 1 or 2 months. On 2nd of April, like once the tariffs are implemented on 2nd of April, once these tariffs are implemented, everything will be priced in. Because from October onwards, past 6 months onwards, we are listening news, various news on tariffs. A point will come that everything will be priced in. Trump tariff बढ़ाए या घटाए. Whether he increases the tariffs or decreases the tariffs, it won't impact the market because everything will be priced in at a point of time. Everything will be priced in at a point of time and that it won't impact the market. Russian-Ukraine war initially impacted the market for 1 month or 2 months. Then it got priced in. Israel-Hamas got priced in. COVID got priced in. So everything gets priced in. So tariff is also getting priced in. That is, the market won't react on April 2nd because they know that on April 2nd, tariffs will be implemented. There's not something new, right? So everything is being discounted back now. When you guys learn about financial modeling or valuation, you learn how to discount back these things. So everything has been discounted back. Future ka price movements on account of different market movements. All these things we've already accounted for. So on April 2, even if these tariffs are implemented, it won't have an impact. Markets still will remain stable. They won't be any significant amount. They might come down, they might rise, but tariff won't be a reason. Until and unless Trump says something else, that he's imposing 100% tariffs or 90% tariffs and then comes back. Because Trump is a guy who also wants the market to stimulate. He's a business owner. Every businessman wants the stock market to rise. Every businessman wants their country's stock market to rise because that will stimulate more income, more prospects, more employment, more GDP, and good prosperity for the country. Right? So that is one thing. So recession ka we cannot say ki 100% hoga. It's always a prediction. But big banks like JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, HSBC, Citibank, BNB Paribas, they have different percentages of probability. But that doesn't mean they're always wrong or correct. It's just a probability they are predicting. But their major aim is, the major aim of the portfolio managers is to hedge their portfolios against these volatilities. Right? If Trump tariffs go into place, if GDP rises or falls, interest rate rises or falls, they have to balance out their portfolios. They have to maintain a good rejig. And what do I mean by rejig? It means good buying and selling for their portfolios, good rebalancing of the portfolios, when to buy a stock, when to sell in a global market. For those fund managers who are balancing or maintaining a global portfolio, I'm saying, right? So all these things won't affect them. It is just quite a small rejig or a small rebalance that they will tend to do in their portfolios, right? So that is one thing. So ये है मतलब कि recession का everyone has a different view, but a view upon stagflation, interest rates, growth will remain common. It's not that I'm telling you something out of the box that no one knows in the market. Financial analysts, researchers, strategists, government of US, government of India, they're very well aware of these things. कि US में ये probability है. But again, it will happen definitely. Again, that's the thing because one point they're also trying to discuss is the valuations of the US markets have become sheerly high, 50-60% high. Usually, the Indian markets, they used to happen, the Indian markets, they generally trade at a 13% overvaluation versus US. I'm saying if we talk about the market valuations, right? Talk about the market valuations. Indian market trades at a 13% premium to US markets, but currently it's trading at an 8% discount. Mostly every company, more than 80% of the companies in the S&P 500, Standard and Poor's Index 500 US में जो है, they're overvalued now. Till what time they can be overvalued? But the thing is, their earning estimates are also coming good, around $290 or something, and that's a very good number. EPS expectation जो हम बोलते हैं, earnings expectation, अगर अच्छी आ रही है, if the earning expectation is good, in that case even the higher valuations are justified. That happened with India in the previous years, previous year, past 2-3 साल इंडिया में यही हुआ है. The stock market became overvalued, be it Nifty 50, especially the mid cap and small cap. But the earnings were supporting that. Since earnings were supporting, since EPS was supporting, people were still buying those stocks. The same might happen in US, right? So again, if you are a global fund manager, if you are a global portfolio manager, right, you need to see all these trends. Even a company which is sheerly overvalued might be a good buy, or you might hold on that company, have a neutral view, कि हम इसको रखेंगे अपने पास. they neither would buy nor sell more quantities of such company if the earnings are strong, right? We'll talk about all these things also, like once we progress. Assumingly, you guys have started to watch the modules also. Once you go via the modules, again, you will understand numerous other things on valuations, modeling, all these things we are discussing in the live sessions also. Not to worry for that, right? But at least start watching the modules. I will suggest everyone, because that will make your fundamentals concepts very clear. Now, here I do not mean ki watch modules only. We have live sessions every weekend. Every weekend we have a live session. But modules will also make you much more confident, will make your base clear, will make your concepts clear, fundamentals clear, right? So modules भी देखो, John, don't just wait for the live sessions. Moria sir will keep a live session on weekend. I will just watch that live session or the recording of that live session. No. Modules are also meant for your learning. It's a complementary. Both live sessions and modules tend to complement your learning. I've seen many students who are lacking on even starting the modules. Start karo. Rarest to rarer platforms provide you the facility of live sessions. Max to max, they'll just give you a live doubt session. That we'll be having weekly doubt sessions. And that's it. The concepts which have been discussed in the modules, they won't discuss those concepts again in the live sessions, right? Or have some new concepts with some more clarity, with some more practical implications, right? So that is the facility which is being provided to you. So value that, I'm saying, right? So modules bhi dekho, watch modules fully. Try to complete them as soon as you can. As soon as you can, again, do not take me that wrong way. मैं जल्दी जल्दी भाग के बस खत्म करने हैं, right? No. Taking your time as soon as possible, I mean कि तुम्हें समझ भी आए. Whatever you are reading, your first module, second module, third module, try to understand conceptually, make notes, have questions, ask me on WhatsApp, ask me on some other social media platform on which you are comfortable about. Schedule a call with me on WhatsApp. Just text me that I want to contact you. I have a list of doubts. We'll connect, right? So make notes, start understanding the crux, watch live session because both of them are complementary. I'll be sharing study materials with you, PPTs, PDFs, everything will be given to you, right? So everything we're trying to discuss in a practical way via live sessions and modules, correct? So try to take the maximum of it. एक होता है ना, you guys have paid for it, so try to derive the maximum value. And because even if you're paying a 1 rupee for a curriculum, try to derive the full value of that 1 rupee. Correct? So that is something, and that will come out of if you watch modules, because I get to know on a student by student basis that what's your module completion rate, right? If it's closer to 80%, 90%, 100%, then well and good, like you'll be eligible for certifications also later. Like once your specific time period for the completion of the curriculum is done. If not, then you won't get, to be honest, right? Like you'll be having live projects and different things. So वो सब चीजें करनी है because that will make your career very solid. Your job searching, your on the job work, very solid, very fundamentally strong. So be positive, watch modules, watch live lectures, everything, do that. ठीक है? Or coming back to placements, see, if you talk about placements and all in general, see, the thing is, you guys can keep on mentioning your questions in the chat box. If you guys want to unmute, you guys can raise your hand. I'll be happy to unmute you. ठीक है? बोल के पूछना है, free flow, right? So go ahead. Chat box में type करना है, go ahead, right? I'll answer that concern. Anything pertaining to markets, stock markets, placements, jobs, what to do, what not to do, क्या करना है, क्या नहीं करना, ask me full-fledged here, right? So see guys, many of the people I see in here is, as I keep on communicating with you, you guys can put in your question in the chat box and raise your hand. Turn by turn, like in between, I will unmute you. Okay? So the thing is, ki, if we talk about various things in markets, right? Give me a second. Yeah. So I was saying that many of the people we see here now, they're aspiring investment bankers. If not exactly investment bankers, like some of the different roles into IBs, right? Be it M&A, that is your mergers, acquisitions, IPOs, LBOs, leverage buyouts, equity research and financial modeling. Many of the people I see, all of the 100 plus people like which are present in that group, right? Many of the people see are equity research enthusiasts, right? Equity research and valuation enthusiasts. And many of them depend upon just watching the modules also. Just watching the modules only on the website. Or like watching the recording. Because everyone knows that the facility is available. Right? अगर मैं recording नहीं भी करूँगा attend, so अगर मैं live session नहीं भी करूँगा attend, I will get the recording. Right? Again, that's not a good practice. Live sessions, you can ask your queries on the spot. It's a different feeling that you have. Right? Obviously, I can't handhold you to wake up in the morning and join those sessions. Guys are mature enough. But those guys were really watching those live sessions, like we're keeping a record. Like we'll come on this live session and all the support we're happy to provide to them, specially. Right? So दोनों चीजें आओ, classes में भी आओ, that will really help you out. So to all the aspiring investment bankers, equity research analysts, financial modeling experts, that who want to get up these kinds of profiles in different companies, right? You might be doing training from me. You might also be learning from other platforms, right? So not to demean anybody, but the thing is, start tracking global market news. Learn about global markets. Watch daily market content. I also keep on posting something on those groups, right? From YouTube, like some of them are the YouTube videos from CNBC, from Z Business, NDTV Profit, right? Bloomberg TV. A few videos I post from the global markets where there are foreign global managers or the foreign portfolio managers who are trying to comment upon the global markets, providing their view. So ये सब चीजें start taking out some time on daily basis, right? Start taking out some time on daily basis to track the global market news. वो global market news देखो सुनो. I keep on sharing certain links. Once you start watching those links again, initially you might feel it is taking a lot of time. One video might range from 15 minutes to 30 minutes, right? One video might range from 15 minutes to 30 minutes, and there might be 4 or 5 such videos on one particular day that might range from 30 minutes, right? So that makes it to like 150 minutes, correct? Around 2.5 hours. But that is the thing, the habit that you have to build in. It's not just कि घर पे आकर ही शांति से when you are done with the work and while sleeping we're watching those videos, right? While eating, try to listen to them. While driving, try to listen to them. If you are traveling via metro or a public transport, right? Use an earphone and try to listen कि क्या हो रहा है क्या नहीं हो रहा. So whatever time you get in between, right? By your lunch time, your dinner time, traveling, walking, XYZ, right? Try to listen to those YouTube videos. So those 2.5 hours or 3 hours कैसे निकल जाएंगे ना, you won't even know. I'm not insisting you to spend 3 hours in one go कि सोने से पहले रात को, like if you're sleeping at 12 a.m., right? Average time for our generation is like 11:30 to 12 a.m. हम सोते हैं. I'm not saying you to wake up till 12 a.m. or like 2:30 a.m. and watch these. No. In between, whenever you get time, while traveling, while eating, जब भी बीच में time मिल रहा है, like when you are not interacting with anybody, listen to these. 30 minutes via lunch, 30 minutes via dinner, like 1 hour while traveling. All these things will really help you out. Morning में जाते हुए, शाम को जाते हुए. So for that, you have to take out time. Initially, it tends to be cumbersome, right? There might be a few terms you might not understand. Initially, for all those who are complete freshers, there might be some complex terminologies or complex philosophies that these managers tend to use in the YouTube links. Some analyst, some portfolio manager, some company's management might come into place and they talk about their companies, their financials, their revenues. Sometimes there are some proper conceptual shows like mutual fund shows, PMS shows, ETF shows, right, on CNBC, on C Business. You might not understand specific terms. Stop, go to Google or make a note of these terms. Find the meaning of those terms in Google. I can guarantee you majority of the terms and concepts we have discussed via the live lectures and recordings also. If we watch those whole modules again, that will also be clear. But I understand the consistency won't be maintained कि कौन से module में कौन से YouTube video का term है, right? But that is the best thing. Stop there or make a list of those things. फोन में तो नोटपैड होता ही है, right? I'm not saying you to write it somewhere, right, while traveling. Make a note of it, pause that video, go to Google, find the meaning initially, have a clear idea. Deep dive का time है, if you have really have a time to deep dive into that specific terminology. Overview उस term का समझ गए, well and good. 99% people in the market are just understanding the overview, and that is why they're not able to make the investment decision. But it's good also to understand the overview, because at a point of time you will understand that term deep dive in the modules or live lectures. But if at that particular point of time, if you have time to deep dive to that particular term via Investopedia, CFI.com, jahan se bhi, that will really make you unique. So that time you have to manage. How will you manage the time? That's completely on you, because my schedule might be different from your schedule. Someone might be working in the morning shift, someone in the afternoon, like someone in the night. Apart from job, you might be doing some freelancing, some extra business, some sports, कुछ भी कर रहे हो. You have to manage your time. If you want to build up a career into finance, be it any of the finance roles. So start spending time on reading global market news. And here the word global is very important. Many of we as people make the mistake. We just read or watch videos on Indian markets only. It is not bad. Indian markets पता होनी चाहिए, सबसे पहले पता होना चाहिए, because it's your home country. But apart from that, learn about other global markets. US markets कहीं लिख लो. Indian markets तो करनी ही करनी है. US markets, European markets, German markets, UK markets, Japanese markets, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, Mexican, Thailand, Korea, Taiwan, Malaysia, all these emerging markets and developed markets, what's happening in these countries, what's not happening in these countries, how the macro parameters, what do I mean by the macro parameters? Inflation, GDP, interest rate, PMI, IIP, all those macro indicators, ये क्या होते हैं? We'll be discussing them. These have been talked about in the modules also, right? How will these things impact their home country? The impact in their home country, how will it impact the other countries? If FIIs are selling off the Indian markets, going short in the Indian markets, where the money is going, why the money is going, why the people call China as a tactical trade. What do we mean by a tactical trade? It's a short-term trade. Make money and then leave. US India are not tactical trade. These are long-term bets. Investment purposes के लिए होते हैं, right? As of now, China is a tactical trade. It might become a long-term trade after 1 year, after 6 months or 2 months. Why these things are happening? Why are tariffs on which goods? Having a fair idea about the PMI inflation numbers. I'm not saying exactly. India में the inflation rate CPI as of Feb is 3.61%. अभी recently आया, मुझे याद है. After 1 month I will forget, right? Because March का new number आ जाएगा, right? Obviously you won't remember the inflation for every country, but at least for these emerging economies and developed economies, राइट? फेयर आइडिया. अगर तुम 3.5% का नंबर कहीं है, उसको तुम बोलोगे 3% और 4% और दैट्स फाइन, बट हैविंग एटलीस्ट अ फेयर आइडिया व्हाट्स हैपनिंग इन द ग्लोबल मार्केट्स, right? Because what will happen is, I'll take the two questions in the chat box in 1 minute. So the thing is कि पता होना चाहिए, because it's not mandatory. If you work for Indian companies, you might get Indian profiles, right, to work upon Indian stocks. But many of the Indian companies also have global stocks in their portfolios, like Parag Parikh Flexi Cap. 65% is your domestic companies, and remaining 35 is your foreign companies, Apple, Amazon, वगैरह. Right? Many of the companies are like building up the global portfolios. But if you land up into investment banking companies like JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, you might not always get an Indian research profile. They might give you a global equity profile. They might give you a research upon US equities, on European equities, Chinese equities, Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Taiwan equities. You might have to create the financial model upon Taiwan stocks, upon Malaysian stocks. Again, you can't bifurcate ना कि मुझे बस Indian roles के लिए apply करना है. If you want to diversify your horizon, diversify the opportunities that come onto your plate, you need to know fairly about the global markets, what's happening in the global market. Because अगर मुझे सिर्फ Indian markets में पता है, and I get a role for US markets, European markets, Vietnam markets, I won't be able to get into those roles. I won't be able to apply for such roles. Because when you work for global corporates, अगर तुमने 2 साल 3 साल 4 साल भी काम कर लिया ना, you have a global perspective. That's really good to get as an experience. You learn various different things. The opportunity or opportunities set for different companies, different careers and profiles tend to increase, right? So always, I'm insisting everybody learn about global markets. Focus upon Indian markets, your bread and butter, but also start learning about global markets. क्या हो रहा है? चाइना का स्टिमुलस आया, उससे क्या इम्पैक्ट हो रहा है? All these things you have to know. Okay. I'll come to a question in the chat box. To learn the advanced modules, do we need to learn R, Python, and SQL? Your first priority should be advanced Excel, VBA macros, Tableau, Power BI, Power Query. That should be your first priority. Your bread, butter, everything is that only. वो अगर कर लेते हो, you have time and your role requires these things, then only go for that. If your role doesn't require for these things, then don't go for that. But first thing is advanced Excel, Tableau, Power BI, Power Query will ask you everywhere. Some companies tend to use Tableau, some companies tend to use Power BI. The both of them make dashboards. But not all the companies use both Tableau and Power BI because they have a tie-up. They work on a subscription-based model, right? So if you know Power BI and you work in a company that has a license for Tableau, you need to know Tableau. Then you can't question or you can't argue कि मुझे तो आता है Power BI and Power BI does the same thing. No, some companies tend to use Power BI and not Tableau, right? So for example, JP Morgan use Tableau, right? Many your Morgan, not Morgan, Goldman Sachs or your HDFC Securities, Motilal Oswal, they tend to use Power BI, right? And now what happens now? They are predefined separate roles, right? Like which are hired only for Power BI and Tableau. So Excel should be known by all, but there are separate teams or separate roles which make Power BI presentations, Power BI dashboards, or Tableau dashboard. Because earlier, a financial research analyst or a portfolio manager was creating those Tableau reports, those Power BI dashboards, and that used to consume a lot of time. कि एक ही बंदा मार्केट भी रिसर्च कर रहा है, पोर्टफोलियो भी मैनेज कर रहा है, and Power BI and Tableau reports भी बना रहा है, right? So just for the sake of maintaining a kind of a work-life balance, kind of a stuff which companies don't insist like really upon, but just to have a bifurcation, the separate team should do this work of Power BI and Tableau. The fund manager, the research analyst will be guiding the person how to make it, usko kya chahiye, right? But the actual presentation shall be made by that. Initially, I used to make like some Tableau Power BI presentations at JP. After 6 months or 7 months, they said कि तुमको नहीं बनानी. There's separate team that will make it. But you need to know because in the interview, they might ask you about Tableau and Power BI. Advanced Excel आना चाहिए. Advanced Excel को separate team नहीं करेगी because every day you are preparing those equity research models, right? Those financial models upon Excel only. You're using those Excel tools on daily basis. VBA macros you might not use daily, but at least having a fair understanding of VBA macros is essential. You might not be using for daily work. You might never use it also, right? But some profiles, some industries have something automated from backend. Sometimes you might to change the backend code. So at least having a fair idea how to change that macro, how to play with that macro is important, right? So first preference always to everybody. Advanced Excel, VBA macros कर लो. Tableau, Power BI सीख लो. Power Query सीख लो. Right? There are many people who join our curriculums for just like investment banking training. They just want to learn fundamental analysis, financial modeling, valuation, right? Your portfolio management, etc. But Excel, Tableau, Power BI सीखना is also very important. There are many people who just have the financial knowledge, 100%, 200% conceptual fundas clear है उनके mind में, but they do not know the practical implication of it on Excel, on Tableau, and Power BI. How to make those kinds of reports, how to furnish that data, transform that data on a Tableau and a Power BI, on Excel, how to use VBA macros. Those people don't clear the process, to be honest. They will say, the interviewer will say, or the hiring manager will say, तुम्हें नॉलेज बहुत है, तुम्हें सब पता है, पर इसको इंप्लीमेंट कैसे करना है एक्सेल, टैब्ल्यू, पावर बीआई. So again, both these things tend to complement each other as our live sessions and modules tend to complement in a similar way. Where Excel, Tableau, Power BI, they tend to complement this curriculum. तो ये curriculum तो सीख ही रहे हो, इसकी practical implementation तो सीख लो in Tableau, Power BI. Again, that is very important. Some people just know Tableau, Power BI, but have no financial understanding. Again, they also don't succeed, right? So, dono you have to. Many of the interviewers are now have started to test you on Tableau and Power BI also in the interview process. Excel तो करते ही करते हैं. You go for an equity research interview, Power kind of a portfolio manager interview, investment specialist interview. They test you upon Excel. They will say you to create financial model. They will give you some empty spaces. Like there might be a case study. You have to fill in those empty spaces. I've shared 2 case studies on group also to solve. I will share once again. Empty case study, equity research interview में कैसी कैसी case studies होती हैं. And the same case study via different numbers is given in many Indian companies. HDFC, Motilal, DSP, Quant, even at JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, this similar case study is given to solve. Creating a financial modeling is one thing on Excel, but these kinds of case studies that they have started to give. Tableau, Power BI, they are testing. तो हो सकता है कि you learn this course, but when you go in the interview, they test you upon Tableau Power BI. And Tableau Power BI तो STEM नहीं आता होगा, then क्या करोगे? Right? That is important. वो अगर अच्छे से आ गया, then go for R, Python, SQL. Again, one thing. Python, SQL, R, separate teams are using. In my career, I've seen separate teams using that. I'm having a fair idea of using these tools, but me personally don't have a hands-on. Right? मैं रोज यूज नहीं कर रहा R, Python, SQL को. Separate teams हैं. From many years, I've not been using R, SQL, and Python. Separate teams are using it. So if you want to build up a career into data analytics is a separate profile. Statistics, they need to know about stats. SQL, Python, R. Then all these things are mandatory. Super mandatory. आना चाहिए. ठीक है? Next question है, I'm someone with BBA. I haven't done CA or CFA after spending 5 to 6 months with this curriculum. What role I could learn in start with prior experience of 2 years into equity and financial services, and it's necessary for me to go for a CFA. So see, again, it's a very good question. Should you go for a CFA or not? See, during our parents' time, right, or our elder brothers and sisters' time, MBA was the core degree. Agar MBA kar liya, you are set. Right? MBA was a super degree. Now it's like everyone is doing an MBA. फिर CFA आ गया market में. Now everyone has started to do a CFA. You mostly go on LinkedIn, you see your peers. Everyone nowadays has become a CFA level 1 candidate. I mean CFA level 1 candidate. He hasn't cleared CFA level 1. He's a candidate. Now he only knows that whether he has applied on the portal, paid the fees or not. Right? Many of them mention CFA level 2 cleared. CFA level 3 cleared. India has the largest number of CFA registrations. I mean, CFA registration is not CFA cleared, right? Now, if many people have started to do CFA, how will you differentiate among a good CFA and a non-good CFA? Many of the people tend to come to our organization where I work in currently, where I've worked in the past too. CFA level 3 cleared, CFA charter holders. We ask them questions, they know nothing. When a concept ही नहीं पता. They've just cleared CFA just for the sake of doing it. Just because their friends are doing it, their family members are doing it. And on YouTube, there are multiple YouTubers and people who tend to fascinate CFA. You are a CFA, you go to a kind of a white collar job, wearing coat, pant, tie, US में भाग रहे हो, deals close कर रहे हो. That might not be the reality always, right? So if everyone is doing a CFA is becoming penetrated, then will the importance of CFA persist? Absolutely not. They might come up with new degrees. हाँ, CFA, APS आ जाएगा कुछ भी, right? When these things gets penetrated now, you need to stand out. Then how will you stand out? See, as of today, as of the next 10 years, CFA will have a weightage. Next 7 to 10 years, CFA will have a weightage. So, if CFA करके you want to build up a career, you can. But CFA is not always mandatory. There are many people who land into jobs. They start from back office, smaller profiles, and then scale to higher profile. CFA might land you directly into a higher profile. So that's the advantage it might give you because CFA का tag लगा होगा, CFA level 3 cleared हो गया, CFA charter holder होगा. It might land directly into a cream profile. Non-CFAs also can directly land into cream profiles on the basis of skills, experience, luck, referral basis. But CFAs भी आजकल मार्केट में ऐसे बहुत हैं जो अनएम्प्लॉयड हैं, जिनको रोल्स नहीं मिल पा रहे, equity research, portfolio management, because they don't have the conceptual understanding. So I insist doing a CFA will give you advantage only if you have interest in finance. If you have interest in fixed income, equity, financial statements, numbers से खेलने में मजा आता है, right? You generally have a passion for CFA. You aren't doing CFA just because your friend is doing it, just because various YouTubers show you the glamour कि CFA का starting salary is 20 lakhs fixed, is 30 lakhs fixed. I am Ahmedabad CFA graduate, 50 lakh fixed. No, if you have interest, genuinely finance सीखना, you want to grow in life, you don't want to copy your journey or struggle with the other one, if you don't want to compare your degrees or struggle with the other one, then go for a CFA. But if you're going for a CFA just because the other person is doing it and CFA में पैसा ज़्यादा है, then don't do it. To be honest, ठीक है, तो interest है, core interest है, you want to do CFA, then go for a CFA. Top 5 skills to get strong grip. Because I've seen many people now who are MBAs also, who are BBAs also, having a certain years of work ex in a tier 2, tier 3 firm, into a boutique firm, boutique portfolio manager, research, financial services, they also land into such profile after 5 to 6 years. Because they get up that skills, they do curriculums from outside, right? They get that skill, conceptual understanding, and on CFS also land into such roles. The main focus should be learning. Top 5 skills to get strong grip on, technical, non-technical to stay to get fastest career growth. First thing which I always say is skill is stay updated. The biggest skill is upskilling yourself in sense of being updated. If someone asks me today what happened in the markets yesterday, agreed, I won't be able to give something exact, but I'll be able to give a fair idea. What happened in India, what happened in US, China, Europe, kya ho raha hai? A fair idea, right? That is one thing. Second, communication skills. Well, communication is something that will set you apart. There are many people who do not, who get those jobs, and when they go on the presentations to crack deals, they might lack financial knowledge, but they have good communication skills. Communication skills always give you an edge over your knowledge. So good communication skills, when to speak, how much to speak, when not to speak, how to tackle dispute, how to be a diplomat in different situations, how to tackle different situations is something that will always give you an edge. So communication skills, soft skills, hard skills, ऐसे इसमें ही आ जाते हैं. Then third one is, ये दो skills मैंने बता दी. Then third one is equity research and financial modeling. Equity research and financial modeling is common for all the profiles. You go for fixed income research, you go for investment specialist, you go for portfolio manager. In those roles, you do not have to actually make an equity research report or prepare the financial models on Excel. But portfolio managers, investment specialists, but sometimes equity research analysts in their careers. They start from there and then they reach there. So they will ask you questions upon equity research and financial modeling, even if you're not appearing for such profiles. You're going for a portfolio manager profile even. They will ask you such things, right? So equity research and financial modeling. Fourth one is your portfolio management. How to create a portfolio, how to manage a portfolio, different philosophies, when to buy, when to sell, how much to buy, how much to sell, right? Again, you will learn this via this curriculum. Different theories of portfolio management is very crucial. And fifth, I will suggest something is what? Something which is very important. See, is your, see, in your third point, like when I talked about equity research and financial modeling, try to incorporate fundamental analysis, right? So fundamental analysis is something when you are trying to read the annual report of the companies, all kinds of financial ratios, valuation ratios, because अगर वो नहीं आता तो हम equity research financial modeling नहीं कर सकते, right? So one is you're updating yourself about the global market news. Number two is communication skills. Number three is fundamental analysis, which incorporates equity research and financial modeling. Fourth is portfolio management, right? And fifth one is having a fair knowledge upon technical and statistics. Now, I'm not saying you to become a technician, कि सारे charts को देखना आता है नहीं आता. Having a fair understanding to see charts and knowing some statistical tools that we learn in stats, mean, variance, covariance, hypothesis, kurtosis, skewness, all these metrics. If 5 things, if you do thoroughly, na, can have a good, faster career growth. That is the thing. ठीक है, तो ये चीजें रखो. And at the top of it, सबके top पे a golden rule, start building up good connections. Because even to be honest, referrals also help you out getting placed. Right? Start building good connections on LinkedIn. Start talking to people. Start meeting with good people. Good build LinkedIn presentations. If your LinkedIn is not strong, build that. Don't focus on followers. कि मुझको 12,000, 13,000, 1 million चाहिए followers on LinkedIn. Start posting good content. There are many people who post content on equity research and financial modeling reports. वैसा content डालो. Because even if you're talking with someone on LinkedIn and applying for a certain profile, you will get to know कि person को like finance में interest तो है, right? But nowadays we have seen every second person is posting this equity research model. Apart from that, what else you can post? Global market updates, daily news, a financial concept, a term. Start posting that. That will make you much more confident. So focus on these skills. Those 5 things which I mentioned again was number one, right? In terms of upskilling yourself, having global market news, daily update of global market news, what's happening globally. Number two is communication skills. What to speak, what not to speak, how much to speak, how to tackle dispute, how to tackle the criticism, how to handle fear, stress, emotions, how to talk in such situations, how to be a diplomat in different situations, right? Number three, fundamental analysis, how to analyze companies, annual reports, ratio analysis, valuation ratios, equity research, financial modeling. Number four, portfolio management, how to create a portfolio, how to manage a portfolio, different philosophies of portfolio management, right? All these things like we'll be discussing in the modules and live lectures also. And number five, having a fair understanding about technical analysis, some sort of derivatives or statistical tools, mean, variance, hypothesis, kurtosis, skewness. These terms might sound complex, but we'll learn about these things also. And at the top of it, the golden mantra is build good connections. Showcase your LinkedIn profile. Show off तुम्हें करना पड़ेगा that I am interested into finance. Equity research, financial modeling reports हर बंदा पोस्ट करे LinkedIn पे. अब वो तो पोस्ट करो ही करो. But apart from that you can post extra. Global market news पोस्ट कर दी. सब financial term के बारे में पोस्ट कर दिया कि what is equity, right? What do we mean by stock markets? What do we mean by convexity or duration in fixed income? People will know that you have interest, right? So these things try to build a good professional profile. ठीक है. What are the basic requirements and skill set required to boost career as an IB analyst? I told about this FP analyst. It remains common. Top five skills, like everything will be covered. But one thing that will remain common is all these things, all these 5 points like which I talked about. ये common रहेंगी ही रहेंगी. If you start building on that, तो that will really help you out. Learn about corporate finance. If someone wants to ask the sixth point, corporate finance. Like many of you are BBA students, BCom students, like many of you might be MBA students also. You tend to learn about financial management as a subject, as an elective. Some colleges tend to call it as corporate finance. You learn about NPV, IRR, about the different dividend models, Gordon models, right? The models, all these kinds of things, the capital structure theories, all these things you tend to learn in there. EBIT, EPS analysis, operating leverage, financial leverage, because these things will translate into actual work later. और the concept shall be related to those concepts. तो अगर वो भी याद नहीं है वो भी पढ़ लो. Okay, that's the thing. Yeah, Naman, if you have a class at 10:35, no worries. Take it, just watch the last recording because we are about to get over only. Like in the next 2-3 minutes, I'll wind up. Okay. Anything else, like just let me know. You can just text me directly or just ask for a call. Okay. कोई doubt हो तो पूछ लेना. So that is the thing. Okay. So focus on that. I'm not taking these sessions as quite like elongated sessions, 2 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, because this session is a general discussion. Subsequent sessions might get elongated to 2 hours, 2.5 hours even. But I just want to make you guys comfortable. Because आज मुझे बहुतों ने बोला questions हैं, doubts हैं, careers के बारे में, placements के बारे में. It was general discussion. I'm just trying to keep it. Not trying to discuss upon conceptual understanding. बहुत time है इसके लिए हमारे पास 6 महीने हैं पूरे. Right? साल भर भी है. Right? But that is the thing. The thing you should understand. तो start modules, watch live lectures, complimentary. I have 5-6 points पे ध्यान दो. Focus on that. And come back to me for queries. Guys, do not come back to me for questions and queries. I feel भाई कुछ समझ भी आ रहा है नहीं आ रहा. Right? Come back to me for questions. ऐसा क्वेश्चन लाओ कि मुझे भी ना आता हो. Right? I go to markets, मैं सीख के तुमको बताऊं. And I'll be like more than happy to admit that, like in front of all, कि मुझे ये concept नहीं आता था, मुझसे इस बंदे ने ये question पूछा, very nice question. I had to do my own research and get back to him. Right? So ask such questions because I know you guys want to learn from me, but here also I'm trying to learn from you because you people have different interpretations, different learnings from markets. You guys come up with new things, right? New experiences. So that is the thing now. So to and fro. Any questions, anybody? Anybody wants to ask any question? Any question, anybody? I'm waiting for questions. I have nothing else to say like specifically. Just to take your questions now. Or else we'll wind up. When I start career, I want to know what is your goal so we can keep our targets high. See, my goal for you guys, I have a goal for you guys to complete the modules first. Try completing the modules at least in the first 3 to 4 months. जितने भी modules हैं on the website. And again, the number of modules will tend to increase every month. अगर अभी 80 हैं, next month you might see 82 or 85. Right? So try completing the maximum modules in the next 3 to 4 months. Try attending the live lectures. Because in the next 4 months or 5 months, the goal which I have for you is you shall be fundamentally very strong about all the concepts. And you shall be in a position after 4 to 4.5 months or fifth month max to max that you will be sitting in front of me and my team giving mock interviews for different profiles. So that's my end goal for you. And that should be your goal too. कि आज से 5 months बाद I should be sitting in front of motivational monetary fundas or Maurya Hanspal and like his team, right, and giving mock interviews to make you strong. Because अभी मैं start कर दूंगा mock interviews, like you won't know any. You shall be knowing things like most of the things, but you won't be 100% prepared. 100% no one can prepare, but at least 90% prepared, right? That's the goal for you to make you understand things practically, कि समझ आए तुमको in the most simplest way. And that's via the kind of, I would say, the realistic example that we tend to give, right? तो वही चीज है. Any questions, anybody else? अभी नहीं पूछ पा रहे हो guys, can text me on WhatsApp. We can schedule a call via phone. You can talk to me directly or my team. Anybody. Feel free. ठीक है, तो वो भी कर सकते हो. Are you covering corporate finance in your modules? Right. Many of the corporate finance topics are covered in the modules. I'll be giving you specific materials also for that to read. All those 5 6 points now that we discussed, 5 mantras to grow and 6 mantras to grow, as Arpita and Nasir asked me in the chat box, are a part of learnings anyways. So not to worry. You feel while reading the modules, while you complete this curriculum, you feel something needs to be added, tell me. I will add that too. Yeah. Anything else? Anybody? Any questions? Anybody? If not, then we can wind up the session for today and get back soon. Okay. Feel free to text me on WhatsApp. No problem, no worries. Okay. Okay, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. Definitely, I'll keep on sending materials. Not to worry for that. That's my daily job. From Monday to Friday, I will send you because markets are open from Monday to Friday. I can send from Monday to Friday only. Right? On weekends, I try like if um thing that happens in what basically happens on weekend, if there is some a kind of a discussion, kind of a podcast by different personnel and the portfolio managers, I tend to share that too. Right? तो वो भी चीज़ है, वो मैं शेयर करता रहता हूँ. वन रिक्वेस्ट बिफोर एंडिंग द सेशन, व्हाट आई विल मेक फ्रॉम ऑल ऑफ यू इज, जस्ट गिव मी अ सेकंड. All my students, I will just request one thing. So as of now, we are done with the day.